resources when we are budgeting. I think that has been a gap. We need to see that gap being sorted out by Public Accounts Committee sitting down with the Budget Committee when it comes to the estimates, so that we harmonize those two reports and we only allocate resources to areas where we think we are getting value for money. I thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Mbadi, you've heard what the Honourable Makali has said, and I know you now chair the Public Accounts Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also make my contributions on this motion before us on the Supplementary Budget 2. And Mr. Speaker, I will start by first saying that I know this is a very difficult time for the Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I want to congratulate the committee, which is led by the Honourable Ndindi Nyoro, for scaling the stairs and chewing the gum at the same time. Because this is the time that they not only consider this Supplementary Budget 2 budget estimate, but also the main budget estimate, alongside other very important bills like the CARA and the DORA bills. But, Mr. Speaker, having said that, I want to say the following. One, that even though we say that because of economic realities, that is why we are cutting the budget, the truth of the matter is that we deliberately, as a country, for years now, been not truthful in our budgeting process. I say so because the IMF conditionalities force the government of Kenya to mislead the public on the projected revenue collection. There is no single time as a country that we have been realistic in our revenue collection projections. What we do is we use projected ordinary revenue as a balancing figure. So what we do as a country, we project expenditure. After projecting expenditure, then we decide on how much we will get from external borrowing and domestic borrowing. Then the remaining amount we lump as projected revenue. That is dishonest, and I think IMF also stands accused for participating in this dishonesty and agreeing and allowing the country, the nation Kenya, to misreport their budgets. But having said that, as we say that the budget is being cut by 24 billion, and Mr. Speaker, I'm saying this because I know you also sit in the Budget and Appropriations Committee. Yes, we are cutting the budget by 24 billion, but where is the cut? The cut is on development expenditure at 75 billion shillings. And there is an increase in recurrent expenditure of 51 billion shillings. What is the justification for this? When we are cutting development budget, we are simply not growing the economy. And so when we cut budget for this year, we affect the following year. Because the economic growth for the present financial year is supposed to help and influence what is supposed to happen in the economy in the subsequent financial year. So it is not right to always and continuously reduce our development expenditure at the expense of recurrent expenditure. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that this House, we are being dishonest. We continue every cycle to complain about misuse of Article 223 of the Constitution. But we do nothing about it. In fact, we help the executive perpetuate this vice. I have proposed a legislation in this House, Mr. Speaker, to streamline and actualize and bring a statute to actualize Article 223 because it is too general. It is a blank check that we give the executive, more particularly Treasury, to misuse. You find that we use Article 223 even to buy land, like we did with Ruaraka land. That can never be an emergency. But when I made this proposal, Mr. Speaker, and it went to the Finance Committee, Treasury appeared before the Finance Committee. They made a complete about turn and somersault. And then now that my bill has been rejected. Mr. Speaker, how on earth would a committee kill a legislation, a bill that is supposed to come to 349 members of parliament to make a determination and a decision on? And then we come here and complain how Article 223 is being misused. It is us who has allowed the executive to misuse this article at will and to actually steal from the people of Kenya and the taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, as I wind up, I want to mention that yes, I support allocation of money for flood mitigation and more particularly for reconstruction. The constituency I've represented for 15 years, Mr. Speaker, in this House, and which I continue to live in, and even hope to continue representing in future, Suba South, we had the worst disaster that we have ever encountered as a constituency in Sindo, and we lost lives. I hope that this Mzee who lost the 3 children and lost his home together with the land, because he could not even construct, even burying the 3 children on that land was not possible. Mr. Speaker, I had to use my money to acquire or purchase land for this Mzee. I hope he will be one of the people who will be given money for reconstruction so that he can build, can get land, because I only bought 1 acre for him, Mr. Speaker. This is a Mzee with a family of 10 children. He lost 3 in a day. He now has 7. He still needs to reconstruct his life. So this money should not be taken to some specific areas. It must be taken and given across the country. Mr. Speaker, we are giving money for fertilizer subsidy, but the same is being stolen. This House made a resounding decision on the Cabinet Secretary. What happened later? A few of us went and sanitized him. Mr. Speaker, these are the things we should not do, because the people of Kenya get fatigued with taxation. When their taxes are being misused, they get fatigued. They are not happy. When they see us as criminals who are participating in sanitizing people who are stealing their money. Finally, I have heard and I have listened and I agree and support what the Deputy Speaker said about ensuring that there is prudent use of resources. I support that. But, Mr. Speaker, as we call upon Public Accounts Committee to come up and scrutinize these accounts, it should not be lost to this House that we are underfunding a very key institution called the Office of the Auditor General. If you look at the financial reports that we receive from the Office of the Auditor General, there is a rush in compiling those reports. There is a rush in auditing. We need more resources to this office so that they can do forensic and special audits, which are more detailed. In fact, the few special audits that I have before me, Mr. Speaker, before my committee, are so detailed, are so damning in their findings. But if you look at the financial audits, there is nothing. You are expecting Public Accounts Committee to bring damning reports in this House. From where? The Office of the Auditor General is not well resourced to do proper audit. Let us give that office money to do proper audit, come up with special audit, forensic audit, then this committee of mine, Public Accounts Committee, will be able to bring reports that can be used to control and manage corruption in this country. Mr. Speaker, with those many remarks, I support.
For Gilgil.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this report by the Committee of Budget and Appropriations, led by Honorable Dean Dinyoro. And I've picked a few issues, Mr. Speaker, on the issues that this supplementary is focused on. And number one is education. And I think in basic education, we have had a major problem in terms of the Ministry of Education funding going to the schools, the issue of floods, the emergency response, because what we have seen is that many of these are left to CDF. And don't forget, we budget once a year. So we get sometimes that our proposals have already been approved by the board, have already been allocated to projects, and yet you're supposed to respond to emergency issues. I know schools in my constituency, Mr. Speaker, where we have to redo almost 3 or 4 classrooms for children to be able to attend classes. I've seen toilets that have sunk, and we have tried so much with CDF to do it, but it is not sufficient. It is about time that this is done properly from the ground. And I think the most important people in this process, not just the education officers, but also the NGAO, the national government officers on the ground, from the assistant chiefs, from the wazee wa nyumba kumi, from the chiefs, so that this information is actually budgeted for and money is spread across the country and not just in one region. The other issue, Mr. Speaker, that we need to actually focus on is the issue of overlap and duplication of duties. I know we have allocated some money on El Nino. We have allocated into different state departments. We have done that in the State Department of Roads. If you look at the supplementary, you see the State Department of Public Works, the State Department of Irrigation also has some money. And don't forget, we also have NDMA. So I hope that we'll be able to know what institution, what parastatal, what state department does what. Because if we don't get accountability, Mr. Speaker, as has been said before by other speakers, our problem is not even the collection of money in this country. It is how it is spent. The prudence and actually the accountability of this money, because you allocate El Nino money to different state departments, you allocate to NDMA, the county has another budget, you hear 2% of their budget goes to emergency. We also have some money, 2% from CDF going to emergency. There has to be a synergy way of getting to know what exactly has been done and how we can be able to track this. But more important, Mr. Speaker, the issue of the oversight and overlap of mandate, especially even in Parliament, Mr. Speaker. I don't see the reason why even the CSS in this country will have to scramble to go to the Senate in the morning and come to the National Assembly in the evening, because it was meant to actually increase accountability, Mr. Speaker. You see the Senate focused on the issues that are supposed to be for this House, Mr. Speaker, and yet the counties are struggling with accountability issues. I think we'll have to get to a point, Mr. Speaker, where we are actually clear that the governors should be the ones actually appearing before the Senate and answering the issues of accountability, so that we have the cabinet secretaries appearing before this House. Otherwise, this overlap will keep being a circus, and you'll get a CS even called in a committee in this House, and they'll say they appeared to the Senate on the same issue, Mr. Speaker. And at the end of the day, they know they don't have any mandate in terms of allocation of resources or even any censure motion in the Senate. It cannot go through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of health, I think we still have a long way to go, and I've seen some of the issues being addressed through the supplementary. I'm hoping through the main budget that many of the issues, especially on the referral hospitals, will be dealt with in terms of the budget, because the idea of having referral hospitals, Mr. Speaker, is that we only take the very major diseases to the referral hospitals. If the health centers and the dispensaries were to be working, and that is what the county government should be focused on, ensure that the dispensaries are working so that the issues of immunization of children is taken to the dispensaries. The issue of antiretroviral ARVs, Mr. Speaker, is taken to the dispensary. The issues of malaria, issues that can be managed at the local level, should not get to the referral hospitals. That way, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to free the referral hospitals to be able to actually attend to the major issues, Mr. Speaker. And I've seen on this supplementary budget that we have even a backup generator, say, for Kenyatta Hospital. And I think most people in this country, right now, health is in a limbo, because SHIF is not very well rolled out. The transition from NHIF to SHIF is not very smooth. So we are having very many fundraisers. I don't think there is any member of this parliament who's not having a fundraiser every weekend for a sick person, for a hospital bill, for a body that is held in a mortuary. So we need to get this transition done very well so that we are able to actually ensure that SHIF is working. The issue of Linda Mama, Mr. Speaker, you find that we still have a long way, because Linda Mama was supposed to actually take care of prenatal, the birth, and prenatal, Mr. Speaker. But right now, it is still at a limbo. We are having mothers struggling in terms of giving birth, and we still have a long way to go. The issue of the university funding, Mr. Speaker, I see there is an increase here, but there is a bigger issue in terms of the funding of the universities. Right now, because many children are supposed to choose their courses, or many young people choose their courses this week and next week, we still have them not sure what is happening in the funding model. So I hope that even as we look at the supplementary, we look at the bigger policy issue through the Committee of the Education, to ensure that this is working well, because as it is right now, it is not. And it is actually causing jitters. It is causing families to actually become destitute, trying to get money, to raise money, to take their children to the university. There is much to say, Mr. Speaker, but I see we also have time constraints, so I'll leave it at that, and I support. Thank you.
The member for Kiambaa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this bill, the supplementary budget. And Mr. Speaker, I also want to congratulate Budget and Appropriation Committee and our chair, led by Honorable Ndende Nyoro, because, you know, we really worked very hard to make sure that this budget and this supplementary has been up to date. Mr. Speaker, there are issues that we were able to address in regards to supplementary, and where we made it sure that, you know, we have appropriated money to make sure that certain ministries have been able to get some budget allocations to support them, especially on the issue of emergency, Mr. Speaker. And you realized, as our country, we had a situation whereby we were told about the El Nino, and the El Nino came before we could plan for it, and it had to force the Treasury and the ministries concerned to make sure that they have, you know, some emergency money to deal with the El Nino and to deal with the flood, Mr. Speaker. This issue has really affected a lot of people, especially to make sure that our people have blankets, they have places to call home, because all of their homes and areas that probably were affected by this flood, Mr. Speaker, they were not able even to salvage anything as far as those issues are concerned. In my constituency, I have areas that were seriously affected by the flood, Mr. Speaker. We had areas in Mathare that were affected also by this flood. We have areas in Taita Tana River, and therefore it was prudent for us as a committee, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that we budget and we allocate funds for emergency, to make sure that we assist and help our people who are in dire need of this money, Mr. Speaker. We were able to allocate money. We were able to make sure that the concerned ministries, especially even on schools which were destroyed by floods, Mr. Speaker, we appropriated about 450 million to assist these schools so that they can be able to rebuild the schools and make sure that these students and our people are back to schools, Mr. Speaker, without any hindrance, because it was something that was not planned for. We didn't see it coming, but we had to make sure that we plan for the budget, make sure that they have enough resources so that they can rebuild the infrastructure, so that after the El Nino, Mr. Speaker, our students can be able to go back to school and maybe gain knowledge, so that, because we believe in our education system, Mr. Speaker, and we believe that our children are the next leaders of this republic, Mr. Speaker. We allocated about 450 million to make sure we will innovate the infrastructure as part of it in this supplementary, Mr. Speaker. We were able also to allocate money for insurance for the policemen, Mr. Speaker. Our policemen have been doing a great job to this Republic of Kenya. And every time we have insecurity issues, we always go to them for assistance. And therefore, it was important for the committee to make sure that we appropriate money for their insurance. They risk their lives, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes when we are fighting with the bandits, when they are making sure that our country is secure, the borders of our nation are also secured, Mr. Speaker. The insecurities within our villages, those are the people we go for and call for their help, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it was important for the committee to make sure we appropriate money, we appropriate the insurance fund, so that these police officers can be insured in case of any emergencies within the line of duty, or probably they are sick. They have a place. They don't have to be thinking about keeping the security of our nation, and at the same time, they are thinking on how they're going to be paying the hospital bills for them and their children, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, when the committee on security came, we thought it is prudent for us to make sure we appropriate money for their insurance, Mr. Speaker, and to make sure that they have a place, they have a safety net in case of any emergency. You know, Mr. Speaker, when someone has eaten and you have food on the table, the next worrying thing, Mr. Speaker, is anything to do with the health. And therefore, we budgeted that money and we made it sure, and we told even the committee. And also, we want to say it because it was among the policies that we said that every ministry should make sure that the first charge within their budget, Mr. Speaker, is anything to do with the pending bill. We were able to put 300 million for LELEC because in the main budget, we're going to have 50 million per constituency. So we thought it is prudent for us to give them 300 million to start preparing the infrastructure so that when this money comes on board, Mr. Speaker, they are able to, to absorb and to assist us in our constituencies and make sure that the different committees, different constituencies, Mr. Speaker, are able to absorb the money and they have the infrastructure that is needed for us to be able to help our people, especially on the last mile, on the issues of transformers, on the issue of street rights, Mr. Speaker, we were able to appropriate, Mr. Speaker. And the last one was the food for primary schools, Mr. Speaker. We made it sure that there is money for food for our primary school kids, Mr. Speaker. Because for us to retain our students in schools, it is important for us to appropriate and to make sure they have a budget so that at least when they go to school, some of these kids, they sleep hungry and they make sure that they go to school because they'll get a plate of food, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we did a good job, and I want to congratulate the Budget and Appropriation Committee. I'm a member there, and I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Member for Lagos Songa.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me begin by saying that I support the appropriations. I support this motion on the supplementary estimates. Honorable Speaker, as I support it, let me highlight the following issues. The first one, Honorable Speaker, is that it is very difficult to make a budget when it is very glaring that the resources that are, the revenue side is not meeting the targets. Honorable Speaker, as we went through this process, we realized that one of the challenges that this country is going to face going forward is the fact that our KRA is not meeting the targets, revenue targets as defined by this House. And Honorable Speaker, this is happening despite this House going through the last Finance Act, and now we are having the current finance bill which we are going through, which has outlined various tax measures which propose to realize more revenues in the end. Honorable Speaker, the reason why this supplementary estimate is before us is because of failure to meet about 250 billion of projected revenues. Honorable Speaker, this is the reality of the matter, and this House needs to be aware that even if we have those ambitious projects which we want to achieve as a country, we will never achieve them if we do not meet the revenue targets. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, that is the first point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to make, Honorable Speaker, is that there is the question of increasing recurrent expenditure and reducing development expenditure. Honorable Speaker, all the supplementary budgets that I've gone through, that I've seen since I became a member of this House, they always target to reduce development expenditure, at the same time increasing recurrent expenditure. And tied to that, Honorable Speaker, is the question of something which is now known as exchequer. Honorable Speaker, you are aware that even as we went through these supplementary estimates too, we realized that development expenditure has not happened since the start of this financial year because of what is called lack of exchequer. Honorable Speaker, if you are going to look at budget implementation, then you realize that the economy will not be able to perform as projected because we are tending to implement development expenditure at the tail end of the year. Honorable Speaker, I was hoping that you listen to me, but the Speaker is distracted. Honorable Speaker, please listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying, Honorable Speaker, that there's a question of exchequer which is affecting development expenditure in this country, so that you realize that the development budget will be implemented towards the tail end of the financial year. And this is going to affect the way the economy is going to perform based on how we project the resources. So I wanted to emphasize, Honorable Speaker, that going forward, as a House, we need to find a way in which we can be able to implement our development projects early enough before the end of the financial year so that we can see real development happening for our people. Honorable Speaker, lastly, there is something called confidential account in many ministries.
Honorable Batandi,
yes.
There's a point of order from the Honorable Masara. Honorable Masara, what's out of order? Oh, no.
Okay.
The Honorable Didimas Barasa.
Honorable Speaker.
What's out of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Looking at the members who have contributed on this motion, they are in support of this motion, and this is a clear indication that the Chair Budget and Appropriation and his team did a very good job. And it's against this background, Honorable Speaker, that I implore you to invoke Standing Order number 95 so that you can call the mover to reply. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member for Kimilili has gone in seat and requested that we ask the mover to reply. Is it the mood of the House that the mover replies? Order. The Honorable Soro, you'll take your seat. This will be decided by yourself as members. And order. The Honorable Soro, take your seat. Members, you know very well that today and tomorrow we are debating almost similar matters. After this particular matter, the one next is the division of revenue bill. Then we'll be followed by the main estimates for next financial year. So those who don't get a chance now, I'm sure can get a chance in the next. But this is your decision to make. So I will therefore put the question that the mover be called upon to reply. Will last one other opinion say aye? Will last one opinion say nay? So the ayes have it. I therefore call upon the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I want to assure my colleagues that the next motion is actually the same in terms of talking notes. And therefore, when they get a chance, they can utilize the same points on the same two, the next two. That is the mediation report, and in the afternoon, the main budget. Mr. Speaker, I beg to reply.
Honourable members, I therefore now put the question. I'm trying to get there. Members, I therefore put the question that this House adopts the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee on the second supplementary estimate for the financial year 2023-2024, laid on the table of the House on Tuesday, the 4th of June 2024, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution and Standing Order 243, Roman 1 approves an increment of the total current expenditure for financial year 2023-2024